Sit inside a Hummer H1, and the first thing you notice is how little room there is. The vehicle is nearly 7.5 feet wide, and yet the two people in the front seats cannot reach each other because the drivetrain tunnel between them rises like a steel wall. Outside, it won't fit in an automatic car wash. It gets 8 miles per gallon, and a standard North American parking space barely contains it. That's the first thing that needs to be understood about the H1. The machine that looked like it could flatten anything in its path was also genuinely difficult to drive, difficult to park, difficult to fuel, and difficult to sit inside. Not because it was poorly designed, because it was designed perfectly for an environment that had nothing to do with roads, parking lots, or the people who eventually bought it. The engineering decisions that made it extraordinary were the same decisions that made it absurd, and every single one of them started with the US Army. To understand how a military weapons platform ended up in a suburban driveway, you have to go back to 1990, and to one phone call that nobody at AM General saw coming. Arnold Schwarzenegger was on location filming Kindergarten Cop when a convoy of military HMMWVs rolled past. The high-mobility, multi-purpose wheeled vehicle, wide, low, aggressive, and unlike anything on a public road. Schwarzenegger watched the convoy pass and did something no consumer research department had ever suggested. He called AM General directly and asked if he could buy one. AM General was a defense contractor based in Mishawaka, Indiana. They had been building military HMMWVs for the US Army since 1984 under a contract that specified 15 distinct military roles from a single chassis: scout vehicle, ambulance, missile carrier, personnel transport. The HMMWV was designed to do all of it. Selling one to a movie star had never entered the conversation, but Schwarzenegger's interest was public and it was loud. The media attention that followed his inquiry made something clear to AM General that no focus group had managed to communicate. There was civilian demand for this vehicle, not broad demand, not mass market demand, but real demand from buyers who wanted exactly what the military had and weren't going to accept a substitute. The first civilian Hummers were delivered in 1992 at a launch price of approximately $43,000. There was no real competitor anywhere near it. No other vehicle sold in North America offered anything close to the H1's off-road capability, and no manufacturer was attempting to build one. The H1 occupied a segment of its own creation. What made the civilian program possible was how little new engineering it actually required. The military HMMWV's chassis, portal axles, and body structure transferred directly into the civilian version. AM General added civilian-grade interior appointments, additional sound deadening, and emissions-compliant engine specifications for street use. The military diesel wasn't certified for civilian sale, so a commercial variant went in its place. But the bones of the vehicle, the frame, the axles, the dimensions, the systems, were the same machine the Army had been driving since 1984. That's the detail that explains everything that came after. AM General wasn't an automaker building a truck for the public. It was a defense contractor adapting a weapons platform for civilian sale. The priorities baked into the H1's engineering weren't comfort, efficiency, or parking convenience. They were ground clearance, fording depth, payload, and field reliability. Schwarzenegger received 2 of the first civilian Hummers built. He drove them publicly, talked about them often, and became the vehicle's most effective advertisement. AM General had conducted almost no traditional market research before launching the program. One celebrity's phone call had been enough. But the H1's character, the reason it was both extraordinary and impossible to live with, had nothing to do with Schwarzenegger. It had everything to do with a US Army contract signed 7 years earlier, and the engineering decisions that contract demanded. To understand why the H1 was so extreme, you have to go back to the contract that created it. In 1983, the US Army awarded AM General the HMMWV contract with a specification that would have stopped most commercial automakers cold. The vehicle had to perform 15 distinct military roles from a single chassis. It had to climb a 60% grade, traverse a 40% side slope, ford water 30 inches deep without any preparation. And it had to do all of that while carrying payloads that would stress the frame of a commercial truck. The engineering priorities were written by the Army, not by a product planning committee. Ground clearance, slope capability, fording depth, payload, field reliability, repairability by soldiers with basic tools in combat conditions. Fuel economy was not on the list. Ride comfort was not on the list. Parking dimensions were not on the list. Every decision that followed came from those priorities. The frame is a full perimeter steel ladder design, with 5 cross members connecting the 2 longitudinal rails. Most commercial truck frames of the period use 3 or 4. The 5th cross member wasn't added for marketing reasons. It was there because the Army specified a frame that could handle extreme torsional stress, the kind generated when one wheel drops into a ditch while the opposite wheel climbs a rock. That load twists a frame in ways that highway driving never approaches. The 5 cross-member count was the answer to that specific problem. In civilian use, it was simply overspecified for everything the H-1 would ever encounter. The body panels are 5182 series aluminum alloy. That was a military choice, made for corrosion resistance and weight reduction in a tactical vehicle that might spend years in saltwater environments, desert conditions, or jungle humidity. The aluminum doesn't rust. Long-term H1 examples in salt belt climates show corrosion at the steel frame and suspension components, not at the body panels. That military material specification became one of the H1's most durable civilian advantages, entirely by accident. Then there's the width. 86.5 inches, wider than a standard North American traffic lane. The dimension that made the H1 impossible to fit in a normal parking space, impossible to use in an automatic car wash, and genuinely difficult to navigate in urban traffic. That width wasn't careless. It was the maximum that would fit inside the cargo bay of a Boeing CH-47 Chinook helicopter, which has an internal width of approximately 90 inches. The Army needed the HMMWV to be air transportable. The Chinook's cargo door set the ceiling. AM General designed to that ceiling while maximizing the vehicle's internal cabin width and wheel track, because a wider track improves stability on side slopes. The helicopter requirement and the stability requirement pointed to the same number. 86.5 inches it was. The ground clearance of 16 inches came from the same logic. Not from bigger tires, but from portal axles. Gear reduction hubs at each wheel, where the final drive output shaft sits above the wheel centerline. That offset raises the differential housing above, where a conventional axle would place it, providing clearance under the lowest point of the drivetrain that exceeds virtually every civilian production vehicle ever built. The portal gear housings are visible at each wheel as oversized hubs, much larger than a conventional axle hub, because they contain an extra set of reduction gears. Those gears are why the H1 can drive over obstacles that would ground any commercial truck. Each of these decisions, the 5 cross-member frame, the aluminum body, the 86.5-inch width, the portal axles, made complete sense inside the Army's specification. Translated into a suburban context, they produced a vehicle that was structurally immortal, corrosion-resistant, and genuinely incapable of fitting through a standard car wash. The military had built exactly what it asked for. The civilian world just hadn't asked for any of it. The frame and the dimensions were just the beginning. The H-1 carried an entire ecosystem of military technology that had never appeared in a civilian vehicle, systems developed specifically for combat conditions that AM General transferred directly into the production version without modification. The most remarkable of these was the central tire inflation system. From inside the cab, while moving, the driver could adjust the pressure in all 4 tires simultaneously. The system routed air passages through the wheel hubs and drive axles, connecting an onboard compressor to each tire. 4 terrain modes were selectable from a dash-mounted control. Highway mode held approximately 30 pounds per square inch. Cross-country dropped to around 20. Sand mode went down to 8. Nearly flat by any normal standard, with the sidewalls flexing and the contact patch spreading wide across the surface. That contact patch expansion was the mechanism that kept the H-1 from sinking into soft ground, the tire floating across sand rather than digging through it. When the terrain changed back to pavement, the system re-inflated automatically while the vehicle was still moving. No stopping, no manual adjustment. The driver arrived at the paved road with properly inflated tires because the vehicle had already handled it. This system existed because the Army needed vehicles that could transition between road and off-road terrain without stopping to manage tire pressure manually. In a combat environment, stopping to deflate tires is a vulnerability. The CTIS eliminated that vulnerability. In civilian use, it was simply the most capable tire management system ever offered in a production vehicle, and nothing else on the market came close to it. The fording capability told the same story. Standard fording depth on the H1 was 30 inches, without any preparation at all. The driver didn't need to raise the hood, seal the air intake, or modify anything. The engine air intake was routed high in the bay. The differential and portal axle vents were sealed at elevated routing points, and the electrical system was designed to function when submerged. 30 inches exceeded every production SUV and pickup truck sold in North America during the H1's production run, and that was the baseline. The optional deep-water fording kit extended the capability to 60 inches, 5 full feet of water, with a roof-mounted air intake snorkel and extended breather tubes. At that depth, the H1 was fully submerged to the roofline. That option appeared in a civilian vehicle catalog because AM General saw no reason to remove a military capability that the engineering already supported. The original 6.2-liter diesel added another layer of military logic. It was specified to run on multiple fuel types, including JP-8 aviation turbine fuel, the same fuel used in military aircraft. That multi-fuel capability came from a straightforward operational reality. Forward deployed units couldn't always find commercial diesel. Sometimes the nearest available fuel was at an airfield. The engine's relatively simple mechanical injection system, less precise than the electronic common rail systems that followed, was more tolerant of fuel variation. The multi-fuel specification shaped the injection system design, and the injection system design shaped the engine's character for the life of that platform. The transmission reflected the same philosophy applied to every other component. The 4-speed 4L80E automatic was a heavy-duty unit rated well above the H1's actual torque output. It operated at low stress relative to its design limits in normal H1 service. Not because AM General had miscalculated the specification, but because the military philosophy was to build margin into every system. A transmission that operates below its limits lasts longer and fails less often. The same logic applied to the frame, the axles, and the body structure. Every component was overspecified relative to what civilian use would ever demand of it. The service manual that came with the civilian H1 was the U.S. Army's own technical manual adapted for civilian use. It specified separate lubrication points for the front and rear differentials, 4 portal gear housings, the transfer case, the CTIS hub assemblies, and multiple grease fittings across the suspension. More separate service points than any contemporary truck from Ford, GM, or Dodge. The military principle behind that documentation was direct. Every system must be explicitly maintained on a defined schedule. Nothing is assumed to be self-sufficient. That philosophy produced a vehicle that rewarded attentive ownership and punished neglect, exactly as the Army had intended. All of that engineering came at a cost, and not just the kind measured in dollars. The 6.2-liter diesel that launched the civilian H1 in 1992 was honest about what it was. 150 horsepower, 250 pound-feet of torque. Enough to move the vehicle, not enough to make it feel quick. The engine's strengths were reliability and fuel flexibility. Its documented weakness was the aluminum cylinder head sitting on an iron block. Different metals expand at different rates under heat. At high mileage, that differential expansion could stress the head gasket to failure. It wasn't a catastrophic flaw. It was a consequence of the military's material choices meeting the realities of long-term civilian ownership. The 6.5-liter turbo diesel that arrived around 1996 changed the character of the vehicle. 195 horsepower, 430 pound-feet of torque. The H1 became meaningfully quicker without changing anything about its off-road capability. But the new engine introduced something the owner community would spend years managing: the Stanadyne DS4 electronic fuel injection pump and its pump-mounted driver, the PMD. The PMD generated heat during normal operation. In the H1's engine bay, that heat had nowhere to go. Heat soaked into the unit during a run, and when the engine was shut off, the temperature climbed further without airflow to cool it. The result was an intermittent no-start condition when the engine was warm. The vehicle would run fine on a cold start, drive normally for an hour, and then refuse to restart after a brief stop for fuel. The engine wasn't broken. The PMD was simply too hot to function. The failure was progressive. Early symptoms were occasional and easy to dismiss. Over time, they became frequent, then constant. The eventual fix was practical and effective. Owners relocated the PMD from its factory position on the injection pump to the firewall or fender area, connected by an extension harness, where ambient temperatures stayed lower. A heat sink bracket helped further. The fix worked. What made it notable was where it came from. AM General never put it in the service manual. Owners and mechanics developed it in the field, shared it through owner forums, and it became standard practice among Hummer specialists before the factory ever acknowledged the problem. The community solved what the manufacturer hadn't. Fuel economy sat at 8 to 10 miles per gallon in combined use. That figure wasn't poor engineering. It was the predictable output of a 6,600-pound vehicle with an 86.5-inch frontal area pushing through highway air, powered by an engine calibrated for low RPM torque rather than highway efficiency. Every number that produced the fuel economy figure was a deliberate military specification. The weight came from the 5 cross-member frame and the portal axles. The frontal area came from the Chinook helicopter width requirement. The engine calibration came from the Army's need for torque in the field. The 8 miles per gallon was simply what those decisions added up to. The CTIS hub seals wore over time. When they failed, the automatic tire inflation function was lost. Restoring it required wheel removal and hub disassembly. Not a safety failure, not a mobility failure, a loss of the system's convenience, which was still more capability than any competitor offered. By the time the Alpha specification arrived in 2002, with revised navigation and improved interior appointments, the base price had crossed $100,000. At that same moment, GM introduced the H2 at $48,000, a Chevrolet Suburban underneath Hummer styling with no military derivation and no portal axles. Most buyers couldn't tell them apart at a distance. The H1 couldn't fit in a standard parking space, couldn't use an automatic car wash, couldn't be serviced at a standard dealership. It demanded a level of ownership engagement that most buyers simply hadn't anticipated when they wrote the check. And yet, the H1 didn't collapse under the weight of its own impracticality. Something kept it alive. The numbers tell part of the story. Across the entire 15-year production run, from 1992 through 2006, AM General built approximately 11,818 civilian H1s. That total is lower than many vehicles sell in a single month, lower than the annual production of most niche luxury cars. For context, it's comparable to the total output of a small exotic manufacturer, not a commercial truck program. That scarcity created something that no marketing department could manufacture artificially. A finite supply against stable demand produces one outcome. Values rise. Used H1 prices have appreciated rather than depreciated in recent years. The math behind that is straightforward. The total population of surviving vehicles is fixed and declining as attrition removes examples from circulation. The buyers who specifically want an H1, not an H2, not a modern truck with off-road trim, but the original military-derived machine, haven't gone anywhere. That specific demand meets a shrinking supply, and the price reflects it. Surviving examples are worth more today than they were the day they left Mishawaka. The military connection provided something equally important. The H1's mechanical platform is shared with the U.S. Army's HMMWV, which means the military's own logistics network became a parallel support structure for civilian ownership. Military surplus HMMWV components are compatible with civilian H1s across many systems. The portal axles, transfer case, and body panels in particular are broadly interchangeable. The Army's technical manual, the TM9-2320-280 series, is a public document. More comprehensive than most civilian service manuals ever produced. The H-1 owner community digitized it, distributed it, and built an entire knowledge base around it. A vehicle that shares its engineering with a platform the US military actively maintains, has a parts and documentation network that most civilian vehicles simply don't. The failure modes helped too. The 6.5-liter turbo diesel's PMD problem was progressive, not sudden. Intermittent symptoms came first, giving owners time to recognize the pattern and act before complete failure. The CTIS hub seal wear was a loss of convenience, not a loss of mobility. The 4 L80E transmission's documented wear patterns developed over extended mileage through solenoid and clutch pack degradation, the kind of gradual decline that shows up in behavior long before it becomes a breakdown. No single failure mode in the H1's documented history required immediate vehicle abandonment. Every known problem gave its owner a window to respond. But the most important variable wasn't mechanical at all. It was the people who bought the vehicle. The H1's size, its maintenance demands, its fuel consumption, and its price effectively filtered its ownership population before the sale was ever made. A buyer who reached the point of writing a check for a $100,000 military-derived truck with 8 miles per gallon and an 86-inch width had, by definition, already accepted those things. They weren't surprises discovered after delivery. They were known quantities that the buyer had evaluated and decided were acceptable. That self-selecting population produced an ownership community that researched maintenance requirements, participated in owner forums, performed service proactively, and understood what they had. Nobody has ever documented a civilian H1 frame cracking from fatigue at any mileage. The 5 cross-member military specification simply outlasted everything civilian life ever asked of it. The vehicle survived because the people who owned it understood it, and because AM General had built it so far beyond what it needed to be that even decades of use couldn't find the limit. The H1's end didn't come from falling sales or a better competitor. It came from a regulation, and from arithmetic that never worked in the vehicle's favor. The 2006 model year was the last. Not because demand had collapsed. The 2003 Iraq War had generated a second wave of civilian interest that briefly exceeded AM General's production capacity. Combat footage of military HMMW versus moving through Baghdad played on every news channel, and civilian H1 and H2 sales climbed to the point where dealers were taking orders they couldn't fill. The same conflict that reminded people how extreme the vehicle was also made them want one. Transaction prices at some dealers moved above the manufacturer's suggested retail price. For a vehicle that cost over $100,000, that was a remarkable position to be in. But the EPA's 2007 diesel emissions standards were coming, and the 6.5-liter diesel couldn't meet them economically. The new standards targeted particulate matter at levels that would require a fundamentally different engine, not a revised calibration or an updated injection pump. A complete engine replacement. AM General and GM ran the numbers, fewer than 12,000 units across 15 years of production. A development program for an entirely new engine to serve a market that size. The math didn't work, and neither party pretended otherwise. Production ended. There's a specific irony in how the Hummer brand continued after the H1 was gone. GM's H2 and H3, the vehicles that had borrowed the H1's visual identity without its engineering, carried the Hummer name until GM's 2009 bankruptcy ended the brand entirely. The H2 was discontinued. The H3 was discontinued. The vehicles that had tried to sell the H1's image without its portal axles, without its CTIS, without its 5 cross-member frame, outlasted the original by 3 years and then disappeared with the company that made them. The military HMMWV program continued without interruption. The platform the H1 came from was never discontinued. The Army began supplementing its HMMWV fleet with the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle from 2019 onward, a newer design with better blast protection and a higher power-to-weight ratio. AM General competes in that market. The HMMWV itself remains in active service in large numbers. The military platform outlasted its civilian version by decades and is still running. The Hummer name returned in 2021 as a battery electric pickup from GM. It shares no engineering with the original H1, no portal axles, no CTIS, no military-derived chassis. It carries the name and the visual memory of something it has no mechanical connection to. That's a different kind of legacy, built entirely on the reputation of a vehicle that was genuinely too extreme to survive in the market that gave it its name. What the H1 left behind is specific and honest. It demonstrated that engineering optimized entirely for one environment, with cost, fuel economy, and dimensional convenience explicitly removed from the priority list, produces a vehicle that is genuinely extraordinary in that environment, and genuinely unlivable outside it. Those two things aren't in tension. They're the same decision, expressed in different surroundings. The Army got exactly what it specified. The suburbs got exactly what the Army specified. Neither outcome was a mistake. Fewer than 9,000 examples are estimated to survive today, each one worth more now than the day it left Mishawaka. The H1 wasn't a failed attempt at a civilian truck. It was a military vehicle that never pretended to be anything else, and the market eventually had to accept that on the vehicle's terms, not its own. If you like this video, watch this one next. In 1989, Toyota built a luxury car that outperformed Mercedes and BMW and cost half as much. It forced an entire industry to reckon with what luxury actually means, and understanding what happened to it reveals something darker about where we've gone. That story is right here.